The Void. It's an endless abyss where you can give it anything that you want, but it's never going to be seen again. And yet here we are, speaking into it. Hello all and welcome to the first episode of Naoki's Podcast Corner. As you might have guessed, I am Naoki, and if you're not aware, I am the host of the YouTube channel Naoki's Retro Corner, where the focus is on mostly retro topics like computers and consoles, but it also covers arcade hardware and a few other topics as well. So this is the first of hopefully a long-running series that I am going to be doing, and this is kind of inspired by my friend Reese, who is the host of the channel Reese Rambles and also Control-Alt-Reese, and both of those channels will be in the description of this episode, and I would recommend you go check them out because it's great content done by him. But yes, the idea here is that I'm going to try to do this in a bi-weekly format and then see how things kind of go from there. So if this is the kind of content that you enjoy listening to, share it around with your friends and anyone who might be of interest, because I really would like to see this take off, because it's something I've kind of been playing around with and toying around with for a little while now. And if you're curious about any of the other stuff that I've done, including, like I said, retro hardware, including consoles and computers, then you can find me on YouTube. You can use the tag at Naoki's SRC, and you'll be able to find me on Twitter as well, the same tag. Basically, if you want to see my stuff, type in Naoki SRC and you should be able to find it, if I'm there, of course. But today, I wanted to talk about The Void, or rather, talk about that feeling that we may get when we're recording videos, live streaming, or even relevantly, podcasting. And what I mean by this is when we are talking to an imaginary person, we're discussing something or explaining something to no one. Typically, when you're recording like videos or podcasts, as it may be, we try to have a conversation with ourselves, and it's kind of a surreal thing to do. And I say that because as humans, we are social creatures. We like to engage and learn from others. But then when we are on our own, it's very difficult to talk to ourselves, to keep up a conversation. And for a long time, if you were to talk to yourself, you were seen as mad. And sometimes maybe even we do feel like we are going mad when we keep trying to do this. I know I certainly do. And it's difficult to get things done because on the one hand, you want to be engaging, you want to be entertaining, but then you end up feeling like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Why am I recording this? And I feel like this is especially relevant to me because about 2 weeks ago, I think it was the 27th of April of 2023, I tried to do my first proper live stream, and I've done live streaming in the past. I did do some test things before, and I did stream me playing games. I think it was the first one I did on Twitch. I think it was Retro Saito at the time, and I'm currently now using the Keys SRC moniker there as well. But I believe I was trying to film gameplay for the Mega Drive version or Sega Genesis version of Aladdin. And the idea was I was going to start doing game reviews. That never came to fruition, partly because I realised I didn't really like talking about games. I mean, when I'm talking to other people, I don't mind talking about games. But it was one of those things, I knew it's not something I wanted to do because my interests are predominantly in hardware, in physical things, electronics, systems, that kind of thing. That's where I think I excel at. And so I decided a little while ago, a couple of years ago, that I wasn't going to bother with games because, I mean, there's loads of people out there who can do games way better than I can. So perhaps best just to leave it to them. But to go back on topic, I tried my first proper live stream. That is, it was Naoki's Retro Corner branded. It had a lot of effort put into it. I had a pre-stream animation. I had set up all of my chat windows. I had set up some stingers, I set up all of that stuff. I put a lot of effort into it. And what I tried to live stream was, I have a project, and it was to make a small ITX computer and make it into a headless media player. And I figured, because I was speaking to Hoffman a few months ago now, I think it was the last time, it was when Neil of RMC had hosted one of his Patreon days. And at the time, I didn't realise who Hoffman really was. My knowledge of retro computers and consoles only extends to some topics, at least in history-wise. I'm more familiar with like things from like the Sega Mega Drive onwards, so not really the Amiga nor the ST. So I didn't really know who Hoffman was, but I got to meet him, and thoroughly lovely person. I really enjoy his music. I really enjoy him as a individual. He's just great all round. And then as I was speaking to him, he was saying how he did live stream, but when he did his live streaming, he was doing them of coding. And to me at the time, I thought, well, that seems kind of, boring. I mean, who wants to watch someone else struggle to code? I hate coding myself. I find it fun when you get something to work that you didn't think was possible, but still, I thought it was quite boring. But no, apparently it's quite popular, so I thought, okay, well, I kind of have a coding project and I'd like to make more of a live stream presence, so I'll see how it goes. So I get all set up, I get everything ready to go, I have OBS set up, I have all of my stingers, all of my video overlays, I set the stream going, and I wait for people to join in. So from what I've gathered with Twitch, it's best to, when you're starting off a live stream, is have like the sort of a landing page, letting people know that you're about to start streaming, so that as people join in, they can know that you are about to stream, but you're not quite going yet. I think it's so that people can feel like they're joining in at the start of the story. And I was watching the chat window, I was watching what I thought was the user list in Twitch, at least in the chat window. I was waiting for people to appear in there, and I thought, okay, I expect only like 1 or 2 people realistically will join in, but I'll wait for them to come in. And when there's a decent amount, that's when I'll start. And I think I started about 7 minutes after I started the stream. And I think I had, at the time, I had like 5 people join in. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I'm happy with 5. If I can entertain 5 people for, I don't know, an hour and a half, brilliant. So I began streaming. And to be honest with you, I tried my best because it was a new experience to me. So I explained, I apologise if anything's wrong. If there is anything wrong, please let me know. I believe my chat window was stuck in a restricted mode at one point, and so I did change that because I wasn't seeing any of the chat messages, and I was expecting at least something here or there, but there was just nothing. And I thought, okay, whatever. Maybe people are just getting on with their own things. They are doing their own thing, and then this is just on in the background. That's fine. So I do a stream for about an hour or so, and I go and take a break. I have a drink, I go get myself sorted out, I come back in, and then I realised in OBS I hadn't actually got the stream metrics open. And the stream metrics, if you don't know, are it's where you see your view count and what the bitrate is, kind of thing. And it said 1 person was watching. Now, I remember catching a few live streams where it's like only 1 or 2 people watching, and I thought, okay, well, at least 1 person is watching. I think you know where I'm going with this. That person that was quote-unquote watching was, well, me. Because I'm technically in the stream, I'm in the chat window, so therefore I must be watching. But then I thought to myself, well, what's all of these other accounts? And then it dawned on me, they're just spam bots. So when I was waiting for people to join in, when I saw those names come up, they were just bot accounts. And that, I don't want this to sound like, oh, boo-hoo, no one watched my stream, I feel depressed for it. No, it's not like that at all. I was kind of expecting this, plan for the worst, hope for the best kind of thing. But one of the things that I found really difficult about that is, why am I talking? Why am I continuing to talk to people, as if they're there when there's no one there? And I thought, no, what we need to do, we need to keep going, because if someone does join in and I'm just silent, they're going to click off of it, because no one wants to go into a stream where it's silent. From what I've gathered with most media, like forms of media, people don't really necessarily care about the item at hand, unless it's a particularly notable item. a lot of people, they tend to watch something because of the story, because of the person that's talking about it. I mean, I think case in point, everyone who watches LGR, it doesn't necessarily matter what LGR is doing. LGR standing for Lazy Game Reviews, at least it used to. I don't know if he still goes by that. Clint can do a video on anything. He can do a video on Obscure Minds. He can do a video on Carmageddon. He can do a video on paint drying, and people will watch because he's got that voice. He's got that kind of personality that everyone enjoys. So to bring it back, I was thinking to myself, no, you got to keep on talking. Got to keep on talking. Got to keep on engaging as if people were there. And it's getting up to the 1 hour 20-minute mark, and I went silent because it's not like I hadn't promoted my stream. I did promote it. Granted, I could have probably done better, but at the same time, I thought, okay, maybe it's just a topic that doesn't resonate with people. Maybe I chose a bad time, but I was done. I was tired. I was having difficulty with the actual programming. I didn't make nearly as much progress as I wanted. And to be honest with you, by the end of the stream, I was just happy to have Hello World display on screen, at least on the LCD screen of the ITX PC. But by the time I got to that point, I was quiet. So I got Hello World to display on the thing, and I thought, no one. There's still just one viewer, but effectively there's 0 viewers. And I was half tempted to just click stop broadcasting, stop streaming right there and then. But yeah, I was like, no, you know what? There's going to be a VOD. Maybe people will click onto that VOD. I doubt they will, but maybe they will. So I finished it up. I closed it up like I would do if people were watching, and then I stopped broadcasting, and I thought that was a complete and unmitigated disaster. And I'll be honest, I want to do streaming, but it kind of did put me off a little bit. Again, I don't know whether it was a topic. I don't know if it was just, one of those things where it could have been that just people weren't interested. I mean, I do try to ground myself in the reality of things. Like, I'm not someone with thousands and thousands of subscribers. Not everyone's going to be interested in everything I do. And there's also a chance that as well, like, I think my current subscriber count is something like 610 or 612 subscribers. And I want to just say to all of those who have subscribed, thank you for watching. Because even though what I'm about to say sounds bad, I am genuinely I'm really thankful for the people that do watch. But I feel like half of those subs might not actually be even accounts anymore, or maybe, they subscribed and just completely forgot, or just don't watch YouTube. I don't know. Maybe there's 610 genuine followers. It's really hard to know. How are you to know? So I was expecting, at best, I was expecting maybe 5% to watch, or even 5 or 10 people. That was in best case scenario, that's many people will watch, and I was fine with that. But when you get to near enough the end of the stream and no one's actually viewed it, why was I still talking? It was really hard to keep the motivation, and it's complete contrast to when I'm doing YouTube videos. So with my YouTube videos, I will make a script and I'll write it out, and I'll go to record it, and I'm basically doing the same thing. I'm talking to no one. Even this podcast, I'm talking to no one, and this is completely unscripted, but I'm talking to no one, and yet I'm really confidently able to continue to talk and try to talk into a way I would talk to someone else. And it's kind of weird that we will struggle or rather I will struggle to stream with no one watching and wonder why I'm talking, and then record a YouTube video where maybe it's my most successful video to date, or maybe no one will ever watch it. I've had both of those days where some of my videos have gotten like 8,500 views. Well, granted over time, but still, very impressive. Very happy for that. And then other times I've had a video that barely got 20 views, and even of those, only half of them actually watched the video. So then why is it that or others, maybe if you're a YouTuber, a podcaster, or someone else, why is it then we are more confident in speaking and more entertaining or engaging, or just keep that level of interest in our work up? Especially if something goes wrong in a YouTube video recording, it does make it frustrating to record. It's not something that I tend to talk about a lot, but I feel like I stutter way more when I'm doing YouTube video recordings than I do any other time. And it's not like I've been diagnosed with any speech disorders or a known stutter, but I just lock up when I am doing some of these audio recordings, these voiceover recordings. And this can take multiple takes before I get what I'm wanting to say correct. And what's really annoying about that is that when I'm struggling, sometimes you get really worked up with, oh, I really hate how this sentence forms, but I need to say it this way because it'll make sense later on in the video or something like that. But, you keep screwing up on the same old mistake, and then, you get frustrated, and then it starts reflecting in your voice how frustrated you're actually getting in the recording. And some people might say, well, just pause the recording, go take a break, maybe come back to it. But there's a problem with that, at least in my experience, is that if I stop recording, go away, and go and come back, my voice just sounds different. Maybe it's because of the time of day. Maybe it's because I don't have my headset on in the correct way. Because I don't actually record with a mic arm, and I don't record with any professional grade microphone. I just use a Geotech EX05 headset from like 2013. Works really well. Don't get me wrong, but it does mean that I can just take my headset off, put it back on, and I'll just sound differently. If I move the microphone a little bit, it'll sound differently. And that really, really bugs me when I'm listening through a video and you can hear a real strong disconnect in the person's voice, and you can just pinpoint they stopped recording here and they interjected this. Sometimes you can pull it off really well and no one will ever notice, but yeah, it's one of those things where if I'm recording a video, I don't want it to have that. So I will try to record everything in one session, or as much as I can. Or if I'm going to break it up, then what I will do is I will record up to a certain point where there's going to be a natural break in the video. So like if I'm doing my DDR cab series, for example, I will record one part of the video or one section all in one take, or as many takes as it takes, all in one session. And then I'll cut to like a montage, or I'll do anything else, and then when I come back my voice has changed because it might be a different day, might be a different time of day, I could have eaten, I could have had a drink, and you won't notice it because you've been distracted by what was happening before, that you can't remember what my voice sounded like, maybe a minute or two ago. Wow, I'm really rambling. So to bring it back to that whole, why is it I can record naturally, even if I'm getting frustrated when I'm recording videos, why is it I can still record naturally when I'm doing a YouTube video and still be entertaining, still be engaging, and then I can't be bothered when I'm live streaming? And I suppose kind of tangentially related on that is faking a conversation. And what I mean by that is, if you've watched some of my videos, you'll notice that there's a cartoony dragon who's actually... So just for context, the dragon that is in my thumbnails, is in my user profile pictures, and in my, in the videos themselves, that is Naoki. That's a chibi or shibi. How do you pronounce that? Is it chibi? That is it's a cartoony version of Naoki. It's one of my characters from a long, long time ago. And I kind of have a joke where in my video edits, my timeline, he's known as Naoki Moaner because he tends to moan more frequently than not. And it's not something I intended. It just, sometimes that's just the way it's gone. But sometimes I've tried to have an argument with him, or, a discussion. And that's difficult because it's easy to, for me it's easy to think of what I'm going to say because, I know he'll say this and then therefore I'll say that, and I can write that down in my script. But timing. So if I'm doing an episode where I do a voiceover, I can record everything in one sitting, me, then him, then me, then him. Not a problem. It's very difficult when you're recording live because I can't just say the lines, because again, I want everything to be done in as close to one take as I can. So then I have to think, well, how long is it going to take for me to say that? How long will it take? Will I make some kind of joke in the voice, or how am I going to do that? I found some workarounds, but it's been difficult because I wanted to do it for ages, but I just couldn't figure out how to get the timing right. There's one of my favourite channels to watch is Aging Wheels, which is done by Robert Dunn. He also does a woodworking channel called Underdone. Both of the channels will be linked down in the description, and they're really worth watching because he's genuinely a really talented creator. And I remember I sent him an email not too long ago, and I basically asked, how do you do what you do so naturally? Like, how can you record in one location, in one particular tone and voice, go to a completely different location, possibly even a different day, and record as if you're saying the same sentence as, in one session? How do you do that? And how do you do all of the timing for your multiple clones that might be going through the workshop? How do you have a conversation with yourself? And a brilliant response from him, and completely on brand, was he just replied, I don't know. Not very helpful to me, but sometimes this just comes naturally to people. But I started watching his videos a lot more, and then I realised sometimes, obviously no one's perfect, and I started noticing in some of his videos there was, you could see where he would slow the time down so that the one asking the question would take longer delay before responding to the answer from the other clone. Or sometimes maybe he would cut it between 2 points and then loop and reverse loop and loop and reverse loop. So, if we imagine in our heads at the minute that there's just one person trying to stand still, and, you can't stand perfectly still, you'll move about. And so what would happen is he would be standing around, but you could see how he's moving backwards and forwards in like the exact same way. Basically, he's looping that section of video until he's ready to respond. And that kind of gave me inspiration. It's like, oh yeah, I don't have to be perfect. I'll try to be perfect, but I don't have to be. So I started to try to do that. And over time, I've started to realise, it sounds terrible if I say I started listening to a voice in my head, but that's basically what it is. I started listening to a voice in my head of Naoki and him saying the line after I've said my line. And that works more often than not, but that's taken me time and experience to know how long something's going to take me to say. And so if it doesn't work out, maybe I've not given enough time, maybe I've been too long, then I have to go into post and I have to edit that out. I think you can actually see it in one of my latest episodes, when I announced my DDR minicab project. There was one point where I saying that at least it's 1/4 scale of the real cabinet, and then I looked to what was in the video myself and asked, what are you doing? That take came off almost perfectly. There's almost no editing behind there. The timing is pretty much dead on. But then when I am talking to the cartoony Naoki, he asked, why am I making a cab based on a objectively worse version of the game? And if you want to, I don't mind saying this, but if you want, you can actually go into that video and see where I had to basically cut it quite a few times and do a bit of fading just to take your eye off me, put it onto Naoki, and then come back to me, so that you don't really notice that I've done that. And now I've said it, everyone's going to go through and see that. But yeah, it's interesting trying to fake a conversation with yourself. For some reason, on my notes, I've put down sounds, and I only wrote my notes I wrote this 45 minutes ago, and I can't remember what sounds is. Brilliant. On a similar vein, podcasts on your own. Obviously, that's what I'm doing here. There's no one else with me today. So again, I'm having a conversation with myself. I'm trying to figure out what's entertaining, what's engaging, and I'm having to think, okay, I don't like that. I'm having to re-record stuff as I go along, and that's really difficult. That's respects to Reese for doing this, because it's a lot of work and a lot of effort to keep going. It's not live streaming where you're trying to always be engaging in case someone happens to click on your stream, but it is still difficult as time progresses to keep up the energy and keep up the momentum. I say that as well because I've done a podcast with I've done it with James from Crossed Wires, and I went into that super nervous. I was expecting something to go really, really wrong. And to be honest with you, the worst thing that happened is I got the CPU architecture of the Sega 32X wrong. I said SH1, it's SH2. But that was the worst thing that happened. But in comparison to that, this is way harder because, well, I'm talking to James. We're having a conversation. So, even though I've got notes beside me and even though I had notes then, we could joke at each other. I could bring up a fact that wasn't in our script. Well, I say script, it wasn't a script, like I said, it was notes. And we could just have a whole conversation on that. And that's really difficult because it's very easy to go off on a tangent and a ramble and realise what I've said just doesn't make sense. Why did I say that? What's the point of this current section? I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm thinking of and trying to say, but is that what the viewer thinks? Is that how it goes? And inevitably, I'm going to have to go back and listen to all of my recordings, and then I might have to cut out an entire section just because it doesn't make sense, because I didn't say the thing that I needed to say, because in my head, I've already thought of it. I haven't explained to the listener, however. So, yeah, it's very difficult to talk to the void in this sense, because it's very easy to realise that you're not making any sense at all. So, yeah. How Reese does it, I don't know. I'm sure he'll chime in later on. Finally, I wanted to just sort of briefly give my thoughts on kind of recording more naturally. I mean, maybe you've been thinking of doing YouTube videos, maybe you want to do live streaming, maybe you want to do podcasting, whatever you want to do. I don't think many people really want to listen to someone who's mumbling, being quiet. And I say that in the nicest way possible because we all start like that. If you go listen to my early videos, they are definitely quieter and less enthusiastic than they are now. But if you go and listen to my latest ones, they are pretty much, I'm talking as I would talk normally, talking to someone else. And a lot of that comes from experience and just having done it multiple times and having done it for many episodes now. But one of the things that you do need to realise is that I almost never do it in one take. In fact, I expect to do multiple takes. Even if it's only 5 minutes of audio, I could spend upwards of 15 or 20 minutes just re-recording lines because, maybe I've stuttered up a line or maybe I've made a mistake. You have to go into recording stuff and just know that you're going to do that. Even if you're doing something live, you're going to make a mistake. It's how you handle that mistake that makes the difference. And I'm not the best person to talk about all of this because, my experiences are quite limited. But I can say that what helps me is to, first of all, script stuff down. Even if it's just bullet pointing and saying, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about this, I need to mention this part. And the reason I mention that is because, like I said, it's very easy to go off on a tangent. And if you finish your recording and then listen to it back and then go, oh, I didn't mention this. This is critical to the... Why did I not mention this? Well, putting that bullet point in, you'll look at it and go, I need to segue on to doing that. So writing a script down, writing notes down, or writing a script to have as a very elaborate note, very useful. I've also ended up writing my scripts in such a way that they're only like a sentence or two long and then they go on to a new line. And that's because, for me personally, the way my mind works, the way I read things, it's way easier to look at a sentence and know how to say it if it's only a couple of lines. Because otherwise, I stop being able to read where I am in a sentence. It's a very strange thing. I'm not dyslexic or anything, but that's how it ends up happening. So I've started I started writing down my scripts with line breaks in them so that the recording takes flow more naturally. And even if I get stuck on one line, it's easier to go back and record that line rather than think, I've got to do the whole paragraph again. And sometimes just pre-planning. I struggle to put jokes or humour into my scripts, and sometimes if I do it, it's off the cuff. And the reason it's off the cuff is just because I happen to think of it during editing, I happen to think of it during filming. I really struggle to think, this will be funny to do. I can think of examples where I've done that, but they're few and far between. But when it comes to thinking about how I'm going to record, like a voiceover, sometimes if you're driving or something like that, if you're alone, or maybe you're in the bus or something, or however you're commuting to work, or going to, your shops or something like that, just think to yourself, play the video that you want to make in your head. How does it sound like? How does it feel like? Does it seem like it's coming out well? Does it seem like it's going to be funny? And if not, why? Why does it not seem funny? Why does it not seem entertaining? So my commute is about, depending on the day and time, it can be about 30 minutes to near enough an hour. And that gives me plenty of time to think about a video. How do I want it to flow? How do I want the story to progress? Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, because in videos like the 573, there's a ton of information that I need to cover. And I can think, okay, well, for the Goro Awase section, I can make that as an entire section, and just, you could make that as an entire video on its own, but just like a mini video within a video. But then videos like the DDR cab build, that is difficult because, well, currently the cab doesn't, when I'm in the pre-planning stage, the cab doesn't exist. In my head, everything goes perfectly. Oh, I've cut out all these wooden panels, now we've glued them together, that's all gone well, we've cut the chamfers that we need to, and now we can go on to painting. Yeah, that never happens. That never goes as you expect. In fact, I ended up having to trash part of this cab that I built because it just didn't work. It wasn't straight, it wasn't good. So what do you do then? And well, this is the thing where if it's something where you're building something, you're doing something, you kind of have to do the thing first and then figure out how to make that funny or make that work afterwards. Because, maybe you screw up in the video. So with the Atari ST monitor that I did, a classic mistake, I didn't put on the DIN plug boot. I nearly didn't put the boot on. And I thought to myself, as I'm doing it, whoops, that was nearly a mistake. Oh, but I'm glad I was recording that. That can be quite funny in post. Same with the DDR cab. I was looking at this, thinking to myself, how do I salvage this? But how do I use the footage in the video? How do I make it funny? How do I use this as part of my story? So there's pre-planning and then there's planning as you're going kind of deal, but ultimately it all depends on what you're actually doing for a topic. Obviously for me, where I've got hardware, I am talking about physical things, it's a lot easier. But when you're doing like game reviews or something like that, well, I mean, you can do pre-planning, like I said, play the game and then think to yourself, right, how do I want the video to play out? But really it's also about experience. You won't learn by not doing, so sometimes you have to do it, realize that your earlier efforts are going to look really bad or cringy in 5 years' time, but you just have to know that that's going to happen and just get on with it. Because ultimately, you need to do you need to do something to learn it. And the more you do it, the more you learn, and the more that you can eventually get better at it. Making videos is a skill. It's not something that you learn overnight. You could watch a load of videos on how to do things. You could watch a load of videos on tips and tricks, editing tricks, but you still need to teach yourself how to do that. You still then need to learn your style. And all that does take time. It takes experience, and it's frustrating. It's annoying. You're stuck at point A and you're looking at the quality and you want to say, or at least in my case, you want to say, I want to be over there. I want to be doing that thing. I want to be as good as LGR, who can just put out a video and no matter what he's doing, it's just brilliant. You got to give it time. You've got to have the experience. And there is equipment as well. Like people like LGR can do a lot of his videos in such good quality because he has just good kit. That is his business. He set up his career doing YouTube, and now he's been able to invest a lot of time and money into equipment and skill and experience. You have to hang in there, and you have to realize you will be better in future. But just to me, just have fun. You've got to have fun. If you're not having fun making the videos or doing what you're doing, why are you doing it? And to me, like once you've done a few videos and you're having fun and you realize how your style, your personality comes off, then your voice will get better. And then as you're talking into the void, you don't really care how you sound, or at least you're not mumbling, you're not muffled. you're talking with confidence, you're talking with intent and purpose, and that's what's important to me. So this has been a bit of a rambly episode, but if you want to hear more podcasts or more of me, as I said, you can search my socials and on YouTube and on Twitch, Naoki's SRC. If you want to hear the podcast where I speak to James from Crosswires about my DDR cab build and Sega Mega Drive and the Sega Saturn, you'll be able to find a link in the description. And, you can search your favourite podcast app to find Crosswires. Of course, a shout out goes to Reese Rambles for basically inspiring me to do this, because he's just talking about various topics that he has an interest in. I want to leave on a little bit of a teaser, and that is the Sega Dreamcast. Everyone knows it, or most people know about it. Most people know of the story and how it was the end of Sega's console divisions. But I want to go into more details about that. And as a little bit of a teaser, we will have a new podcast starting up. Yes, I know, 2 new podcasts. It's quite exciting. But this one is called Crosswires Legacy. And you'll be able to find this on all of your favourite podcast apps. If you're listening on a podcast app at the moment, you'll probably be able to find that. There's no set release date at the minute, but we'll go into the specifications, our experiences, and when I say our, I mean James from Crosswires and Jack, or otherwise known as It's an Arse. And we'll be talking about the Dreamcast's history and, our personal experiences. What do we feel? Why did it fail? And to follow up from that, every story has a beginning, and in the Dreamcast's beginning was the Katana, which was the code name for the Dreamcast's development. And it was also the name of the development system by Sega for game devs for debugging purposes. And I will be covering the Sega Dreamcast dev kit in a future video on my channel. So if that's any reason to subscribe, so I hope that's a big enough incentive to subscribe. And whilst you're there, check out a few of the other videos. If you have any suggestions for the topics, please leave a comment. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And I will hopefully be back with you in the next couple of weeks.